Okay. Welcome, everybody, to this session dedicated to the topic of sustainability. It was a request from different members from different rooms to organize or to work together across the rooms and beyond on this topic. On behalf of the Management Office of buildingSMART International, I'm really glad to support this session and the proposal that will be presented here. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes. It's being recorded and it will be made available on the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to our speakers, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. And for online attendees, your microphones will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you wish to ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For those here in the room, please try to keep background noise to a minimum and raise your hand if you wish to make a comment or ask a question. I would also like to bring your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent and standards that are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. As a compliance director, I had to say this. Nick Nisbet is the leader of the International Regulatory Room, and he is one of the initiators of this session. And Nick, can you please share with us what brought you to this proposal? Here is this.
Okay.
This. There we go.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming and for attending online. How did this start? Well, in Montreal, we were having a regulatory room session, and Frank, who's sitting next to me, spoke very eloquently on the subject of sustainability, and I gave him not a very good reply, that the subject was bigger than the regulatory room. I think I then spoke the four most dangerous words in the English language. I said, something should be done. And of course, within a few weeks, people said, Nick, you should do it. And so I thought that it would be a good idea to take the subject of sustainability out of the rooms and to talk about it as something that buildingSMART as a whole should address. And little by little, I spoke to various room leaders. I spoke to the buildingSMART Management Office, and they all said, yes, Nick, you should do something. So that's why I'm here. I'm not an expert in sustainability. But perhaps the only qualification I have is that I have grandchildren, and that's a motivation in itself to try and get this right. So I'm going to say a few general remarks about sustainability and some of the things that I've learnt from my colleagues in buildingSMART over the years, and then we will hear from some real experts for detail. But at the end, this is not a keynote speech or a keynote session. This is an action meeting, and at the end we want to ask some questions about what should we all do. So let me start with a few some ideas about sustainability. It means many different things to different people, and I think we have to respect that. Different countries, different professions, different activities may mean different things about sustainability. Of course, we can go to the dictionary and just take it as a definition of the ability to be maintained at a certain level or rate. But I remember in 1987 the definition of sustainability, which was put out by the United Nations, meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that was the definition that we worked with for many years. I think recently it has started to change. And I think the definition, or one of the definitions of sustainability, is shifting towards the long-term viability of humanity, of communities, of social institutions, and social practice. And that means that it's urgent and important. And we don't, we need to answer the questions about how we can contribute. I found these two diagrams, which I think sum up the two differing attitudes or approaches to sustainability. On the left, we have the idea that sustainability is the intersection of environmental and economic and social concerns. On the right-hand side is the sort of coming view that environmental concerns are fundamental. They are the foundation on which we build or can build a society and an economy. So I think when we talk about sustainability, I think we have to bear in mind both these views as we develop our ideas and what buildingSMART can do to contribute. We also need to put it in the context, perhaps, of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, which is really a summary of the agenda. I've highlighted a few squares, but I think all 17 probably come back to the built environment and the natural environment and how we use it in one form or other. So I think I'm wearing a sustainability badge based on these agendas, and I think we can organize our thinking around these goals when we get to especially when we get to the detail. So essentially, we've got different views of sustainability. We sometimes talk about the triple bottom line of considering the economic, environmental, and social dimensions of what we do as three parallel considerations, or as we saw in the diagram, sometimes it's a pyramid where the environmental considerations are the foundation of what we can do. We also have another acronym, the ESG assessment, environmental, societal, and governance. And this is the modern formulation, or the more recent formulation, of what we mean by sustainability. And this is made difficult because for some people these issues are fundamental, and other people look at them as being risks that can be managed. So that in the finance world, in the corporate world, ESG is just an entry in the risk register that they might get something wrong along the line. For other people, it's more fundamental. But I think, however we view sustainability, we have the idea that it's a more complete and holistic assessment of the impacts we have. We have whole life costing. We have whole life assessment of environmental impacts. We have cost-benefit assessment of the social impacts. And we also have the challenge of how we treat the life cycle. When we're talking about the commitments we make in the built environment. We talk about the capital cost, the embedded carbon, and the committed social interventions. And then we need to think about the running costs, the repeating carbon impacts, and the ongoing contribution to society. And we also need to think about the end of life, resale, recycle, repurposing of the built assets that we're involved with. So there are many dimensions to sustainability, and I think the challenge has been to, I think many people in this room and in the buildingSMART rooms and chapters have addressed bits of this, parts of this. Some people are very knowledgeable and have made major contributions already. This discussion today, I hope, will be about bringing those ideas together. We're not alone. I think one of the themes yesterday was that we need to join up with other organizations, and I've been talking with a group called Zero Construct, who are looking at issues around in the built environment, and they have an agenda, which you can see here, that the built environment is a major contributor to embodied emissions. They have a 6-part agenda, and I think buildingSMART has a role in particularly in design and construction, but perhaps most importantly in measurement. This is what we can offer the industry. So we'll come back to that perhaps. They have developed 60 action points, which is quite a lot. But I think buildingSMART community has something to contribute to some of those in a very substantial way. And of course, we need to make sure that as well as contributing to the measurement, we need to present and understand and communicate what we're offering. This is just an example of one presentation of some ideas. So perhaps the key thing that I think buildingSMART can contribute is to twin threads of sustainability and measurement. So I think that might be the big picture. It's sketchy, and now I'd like to hand over to Frank on my side here, who can talk more specifically about what sustainability means. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nick. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very pleased to speak about this topic as what we should do in the data and what can be the impact on the calculation of life cycle assessment and what it can change in the way the financial world is also acting, because I will also tackle the point of translation between the technical performance and the financial performance. Well, first of all, we spoke about ESG, environmental, social, and governance. So as you see, something I got from my friends from Dresden Summer, because I'm working also with the Climate Positive European Alliance on the taxonomy check and data management. And you see that where we're talking about ESG, the first thing is that we need data. Why we need data? Because we have to look at the quality of the performance of buildings, and also we need to look at the reliability of data, which is something that is often forgotten. What is reliable? How can I trust the data you gave to me? And this is something really important, and the fact that we can work now with systems, that we can work on patterns for the data systems, that we can work at different scales is really important. So you see there that the first attempt to try to give a reliability of data was to build a whole world of labels, certification, reporting, and what else. So I think only in green buildings certification system and labeling you have 860 systems over the world, which are all based on the WSM1, which was developed by ISB 25 years ago, the International Sustainability Board, which is a system of development. And then it's a huge market because as we say in France, when you live with blind people, someone who has only one eye is the king. So this is where we are today, and we need to move from this system to somewhere where the people understood the data, the accuracy of data, the flow of data, and the management of data in order to stop greenwashing and stop easy talks. Because it's easy to say, I will be that zero pathway, or I will be this or this, and you certainly listened to the news last week that European Union wants to act against greenwashing talks. This is something which is quite important because this is the definition of sufficiency from the last IPCC report. This is the key. When we are talking about sufficiency, we are talking about data that can help me to optimize the use of the building appliance, but not only the buildings, the infrastructures. It has an impact on fiscal and consumer policies. It has an impact on regulation. It has an impact on contractualization. Because if we want to act, we need the data to impact on the system. Otherwise, it makes no sense. And this is where I will quote Donella Meadows. Donella Meadows was a researcher in systems. She is the co-author of the World Report done by the Rome Club 50 years ago. But she made a very important document, which is place to intervene in a system. This is key. We are not talking only about doing something. We are talking about how we can use the information and the feedback loop of information to intervene in the system in order to change it. And this is really the key. If you want to read the IPCC report, which is 3,000 pages, please start to read the report based on the working group 3 and look at the sufficiency approach and definitions. This is really key if you really want to act and to have an impact on how we build infrastructures, buildings, roads, whatever. It is there that we have to look at. And the definition of sufficiency has nothing to compare with another one. It's really this word, sufficiency. So, as I said, the main point is where are the data? We don't know, because we are used to speak about greenhouse gas, but we have several boundaries and definitions with the same unit, CO2 per square meter, which is really confusing, because if you talk about energy in use, embodied carbon in the materials, life cycle assessment on 50 years standard base, we are all talking about kilogram of CO2 per square meter with a totally different definition and calculation perimeter. And everybody's talking about these numbers without knowing where are the boundaries behind. So, first of all, the global flow of emissions from services to emission in carbon at the end. This is the way it's calculated over the world. Each nation has to do its national declaration and national contractualization. But, for example, I took a research paper made in Ireland. It's very interesting because it's a dynamic vision of a global impact of construction plus the energy used in the building. It's quite interesting because you see the flow of carbon, and maybe at some point we have to think about to destroy a part of our buildings to build new ones that are much more efficient, because it makes sense if we want to achieve what the Swiss are done. It's very interesting. They do it an opposite way around. They look at the global budget they have till 2050. This is also from the IPCC report. If you look in, you can imagine that if we want to stay under the 1.5 scenario, we have a remaining budget of carbon that we can emit. So we use this equal per capita, and we say, well, how can I put my carbon emission in the next 30 years? In industry, in buildings, transport, others. It is very important because then you can balance if you prefer to put your carbon emission in operations, or if you prefer to put it in building new buildings or retrofit the buildings. Very interesting approach, always dynamic. Think dynamic. Stop thinking about plans, static vision. Think dynamic. I need to think from like a flow. The system is a metabolism, it's a flow. It's a flow of data, flow of energy, flow of carbon. So we have really to open the vision as 360 degrees to think in flows and not in just snapshot. So I will go through that because you know it very, I think, in detail with all the regulation that come in place in Europe with a corporate sustainability reporting directive, which will be very impactful for the banks and insurance companies. The taxonomy, which is the technical approach, how do you assess what is green or not? And the market and regulation is very interesting. In France, for example, since the beginning of the year, it's mandatory to do a life cycle assessment and to have a maximum emission in carbon for energy in use and embodied carbon. I think we are the first country in the world to have implemented such a complex regulation. This is also linked to all the regulation from products, because you have a regulation under discussion with the product declaration, product digital logbook, a building logbook, and this ending at the end with how many or what will be the interest rate when you will buy your house, if it's green or not, and it will be differentiated. Or maybe if it's not green, the banks will not borrow you money, so you stay outside. This is really important because for the first time from next year, it will have an impact on the interest rate and the way the bank will give the loans. It never existed before. It's the first time we really integrate this extra financial information into the system. So this isn't a need of translation. This is something I worked with the United Nations Environmental Programme several years ago. You can still can find it, a toolbox to use and translate the information. This is something I try to put on the slide very schematically, how you go from components, products, lifespan of products, lifespan of system, performance of system, and financial performance of a building, which is linked to the life cycle analysis. Just to give you an example, it's something I made some years ago with the German colleagues in a building in Germany. You see that if we speak about your carbon in life cycle, immediately you can translate your carbon emission into euros. So you can say to your landlord what will be the cost to maintain the building, and you can make the difference. If I go back to products, this is something that will be taken later. You have a lot of definition about products, where to go, information. What I want to show you is something which is started by the World Build Council of Sustainable Development, who are bringing together all the big industry players, and they launched a pact program, which is how to assess the product information and how to share the product information to the construction designers, construction company, and also asset managers. This is the way we can think about a digital passport for the products till the construction side and then the asset management. I will go through an example that we can do on building logbook, where you see, again, it's dynamic. It's on 50 years. Why 50 years? Because it's the standards life cycle into the norm for life cycle assessment. But of course, what would be very interesting is to say what will be the real lifespan of a building in the next years. The idea behind is really to say, well, I have information that I can input in a dynamic drawing of the way the building will behave or the construction will behave. So just to give you this example, what is important for buildingSMART is to be implemented and to implement the standards in the high-level construction forum in discussion with the European Commission, with several DGs, DG Grow, DG Environment, DG Finance. And you know that we can use this model, so I will not explain, you know it better than I do, or we can clearly put the IFC development and all the work done by buildingSMART in external into the data management of a system. This is where we can link the information and the sustainability analysis, because the sustainable value needs to, again, have a vision about the components life cycle, the user value, and also the lifespan of a building and the lifespan of a technical installation. So if I want to conclude, we are again on this flow of data that are coming from the components, from the product regulation, from the building regulation to the financial regulation. And this is where the building characteristics can have an impact on the financial valuation. And we need to translate the lifespan, the life cycle into a valuation system thanks to the taxonomy. So just to conclude, I think that BSI is really the core body. That's why I will ask the European chapters to be together in order to work together inside buildingSMART International, to work with the European Commission, and to work together to bring to the users the capacity of data flow management and the capacity for the experts to translate the technical performance, the greenhouse gas emissions, the life cycle assessment into something which can be implemented into evaluation. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. So let me introduce our next speaker. So our next speaker is Mr. Pekka Virkamäki. He is a legislative advisor for the Ministry of Environmental Affairs in Finland, the country with the cleanest air in the world, the lowest perceived corruption in the world, and also the happiest country in the world. On top of that, Finland just announced new legislation where IFC is required for building permits as well as a CO2 equivalent calculation. So we're obviously very curious to get your take on the topic of sustainability on a national level.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the nice words of Finland. Yes, I'm preparing the legislation concerning now in our new Building Act, and now we are doing work with the bylaws that kind of define the rules in the act. We just 1 month ago it was approved, our Building Act, and there were main objectives are here, but there were 2 points: this life cycle low carbon rules, and also the kind of the use of BIM in the building control process, so that it is mandatory and it concerns all buildings, not public buildings. Not all, it concerns also single house buildings if the designs have been made in BIM. This is kind of the new legislation. We have now 1.5 years to prepare then the kind of the use cases and discount new tools for building control to kind of read the designs and read the necessary information, and also make this kind of code checking tools for the IFC. And we have started it. We have 2 projects, this kind of RAVA 3 Pro project, and also on European level we are participating in Accord project, and it is concentrating on this kind of low carbon emissions. If you think about the background of our Building Act, is so that our government announced that Finland will be a carbon-free country in 2035. on EU level, the year is 2050. So that we have kind of very ambitious goals, and building sector is kind of a very big kind of CO2 emission producer. Here are the kind of main points in our BIM strategy, so that now from the year 2025, building permits are applied for using BIM or other machine-readable formats, so that it is compulsory to deliver as building permit documents also the BIM kind of designs, and they must be kind of delivered in open BIM format, and the only format that has been proved by our kind of National Archive Bureau is IFC4, and now they are kind of looking at so that IFC 4.3 also could be kind of approved as a permanent archiving format. We will collect then after 2025. We will also collect to the National Archive all the BIM designs of all new buildings, and also major renovations need a building permit, so that also those, if they have been planned in BIM, they also have to deliver the BIM designs as a part of the building permit documents. Then we also make this kind of digital building logbook. You have to have the kind of machine-readable operating and maintenance manual before you can get the final inspection and take the building in use. Here is the reason why we have been advancing in this so fast, so that our building industry is now maybe 80% of the buildings are designed in some part has been designed in BIM, so that our industry, also the architects, approve that this kind of BIM designs can be kind of handed to the public administration and also archived in our national register. Here is the path that we have been kind of doing. It has been the first steps were taken maybe 20 years ago, but now if we think about where we are now, it started in 2015 when we got this kind of new building control electronic processing system called cloud permit, and also the Trimble had then developed now maybe 5 years this kind of e-permitting system that is cloud-based. Then we have taken small steps at the time, and now we have then kind of got the new legislation just a month ago that now this IFC will be compulsory and also widely used in every kind of building project in the future. And there are also the next steps, so that we will get this kind of national register ready, built, so that we can start to collect designs there in 2027, according to the law. Here are the kind of the use cases and also some description what we are now doing and in what kind of stage our process is at the moment. But these kind of the most important use cases are also this kind of carbon footprint and circulation economy kind of rules that we have to then kind of define so that we can read the necessary information from the designs then automatically. Here is our kind of roadmap. What we have to do. This is kind of to-do list. What are the next steps and how we have to go further on step by step. Everything must be based on open BIM and also international standards. We are trying to get this kind of integrated system so that also when we renew our building code, we try to make the rules so that they are all machine readable. We have already in our taxation legislation, there comes no new taxation laws if they are not tested so that they are completely machine readable, the rules. So that and we try to get the same in the when we renew our building code. Here is the new regulation then about the climate declaration and material declaration. There is 2 documents that you have to hand over when you apply for building permits, and then after the building has been built, then you have to kind of make a document so that how it went then in the building stage. Here is the climate declaration and material declaration. There is first is the carbon footprint. It means that you have to, when you apply for building permit and then it is finalized, you have to show all the materials and their carbon footprint in kilos. Then it is the carbon handprint. There is the kind of the calculation then about long carbon storages, carbonization of concrete, and the life cycle impacts. Okay. Then there is the material declaration that you have to have of all the building materials that you have been using their carbon footprint. There is the building components, materials, and origin of materials. Then with this kind of the BIM, we have to use it because the calculations are so complex that it is impossible to kind of control them without tools and using BIM. Here are the kind of the details that we are then defining in the bylaw that will take place before the end of this year. Okay. And here is also we are creating these new rules in this Accord project. There is about 8 countries in Europe that have their own parts. Our part is this carbon-free building. Okay, here is my presentation.
Thank you, and thanks to all 3 of you for addressing the needs and the latest developments on this topic on an international, on a European, and on a national level. I would like to ask you now to change seats with our next 3 speakers.
Yeah, but if I may, I'm very proud because in France we did the life cycle calculation system without the BIM, and we are the world champion to do something very complex without tools.
Always
we are
French,
the best. No, you do it right. I think we did it. We bought two.
So we've asked 3 subject matter experts to share with us how our current work, our standards and solutions can attribute to the sustainability data flow that was just described here. And firstly, our first speaker is Bertrand Lac. He works for Siemens.
Schneider Electric.
Oh, sorry. Okay,
The other
nice.
one. It's
Nice,
the other one.
nice introduction. Works for Schneider Electric and is the leader of the electrical room. Could you please share with us how the electrical room contributes to sustainability? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, yes, I'm working in Schneider, Schneider Electric. So the objective of today is to bring you into the electrical domain and see how the electrical domain can contribute to the transformation towards efficient building. So we have started last year a room that was initially named Sustainability and Energy Management Room. But as I think it's you who said this yesterday, everything and anything we do in buildingSMART is about sustainability. So we decided to narrow it down and call this room Electrical Room to show that the focus is really on electrical power, still keeping in mind the focus on sustainability and energy management, of course. So what is our vision in this room? First, we have to thank all the good work and the transformation done in the standardization and the transformation with the open BIM. But now we think that it is time to, on one hand, bring all the BIM process, the interoperability, the open BIM to the electrical trade. And there is a lot to be done in the IFCs, in the BSDD, to integrate more the electrical staff, products, networks, and things like that. And on the other way, it's also time to bring the people from the electrical domain in the BIM. Because if you go to see electrical contractors and electrical engineers, honestly, I think they know very little about BIM, but it's important that that they come into this open BIM domain. So our ambition is to upgrade and enrich what was started to be done here with what electrical power, electrical network are concerned with. When I'm talking about the electrical domain or electrical power, what are we talking about? So we are addressing first all the electrical things, objects that are fixed and located in or inside of a building. So it can start with photovoltaic panel you would have on the roof, or the incoming of the power distribution from the utility. That's where we start. And then all the distribution network. You know, the big things that are taking some square meter down in the cellar, the transformer, the switchboards, all these cable trays down to the light and down to the socket. So that's the scope of what we want to address in the design and operation phase. Now about efficiency, sustainability. I think I don't need to emphasize on these figures because you are all well informed about how buildings are important for sustainability, efficiency, and so on. I just want to add 2 or 3 additional data points. Buildings are 30% of the energy consumption worldwide, and we can save 30% of that. If I go to electrical power, buildings are consuming 55% of the electrical power worldwide. So it means that building is a major contributor to the sustainability and energy performance. And then, last but not least, if we think operation on electrical consumption, the footprint, just talking about the carbon footprint of a building, 93%, 93, is in operation, not in CapEx. So it's very important to also think what Frank was saying 10 minutes ago, think about something dynamic, and it is in the operation that we have to think how we can save things. So what can we do to contribute to that as the electrical room? So first thing would be, or can be, and will be to select the good products. Also, we talk about the product environmental profile. How can you select a transformer that is more efficient than another one? That will start by having the properties somewhere in the dictionary. So updating, upgrading the dictionaries, the BSDD and others, with electrical staff. Start by that. Second, exchanging model. We talk a lot about interoperability, having the capacity to have a machine-readable description of the electrical network in the building will save time, will save efforts, and of course, a lot of efficiency. Then I mentioned that on the roof, we may have photovoltaic panel. So this also, we need to be able to simulate, thanks to the location, GIS location of the building, if there can be some solar input or not. And that creates, and that is a reason why we need to bring the electrical network inside of the building. So here you see that we are on the third column, that the electrical network is not totally independent from the building, and there are a lot of contribution to this. Next, to my 93%, it's important to enable the calculation of the power network sustainability by calculation of the power demand and others. And this is also a link to the architectural model. Next step, we need to be able to simulate how will my building consume in the next 10 years. Or if I am here in March, I consume so many kilowatt per hour last month for, let's say, for lighting. Is it okay? Is it over my provision? Is it below my provision? That's very important to have a simulation of the behavior of the electrical consumption of my building by usage or by area and things like that. For this, we need a design model of the electrical power. We need interface with the construction of my building to know where is the exposition, how it is, and we need to also have a link with the thermal simulation of the building. So you see that all this is linked together. And then this offers the capacity to compare and know where we are. And last, for recycling, it goes back to the dictionary, having the capacity to assess how a product is efficient or not in the dismantling and recycling aspect. So that's basically our roadmap in the electrical room, addressing all these points. So you see that we have a lot to do. We are just starting, and if you want to know more, come this afternoon. We have another workshop, and we are looking for resources to contribute to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Bertrand, and thanks for the great work you're doing. Our next speaker is Hansueli Schmid. He represents the product room, and in his daily life is an active promoter of the use of timber material with obviously one of the lowest carbon footprints. Actually, 50% of timber products consist of captured carbon. Please share with us your thoughts on this topic.
Thank you very much, Céline. Yes, now I would like to draw your attention a bit more to the ecological aspects of sustainability and products. So the information, the environmental information is actually the basic information to optimize a building. And at least in Europe, we have 7 essential basic requirements for construction. They are described in the construction product regulation, which is also harmonized with non-members of the European Union, like Switzerland. So that affects directly also our legislation. We have those 7 basic requirements, but they have not all at the level of essential characteristics. But in the next revision of the construction product regulation, the aspect of sustainability, ecological aspects will get a new level. They are becoming essential characteristic, and that means manufacturers have to provide this information with their product data sheet. Information are needed. With the EU Green Deal, we have many aspects which have to be tackled in the construction environment, and therefore we have to find a way for the industry how to provide information in an efficient way that serves all those needs. Construction Products Europe has a very good website with an interactive overview. We heard before from taxonomy. This is certainly an important way to support or to set incentives for more ecological buildings over the whole life cycle. That's the important thing here. So we have many requirements, and we have also different performances, basic requirements, as we saw before. There are different ways to declare that, and we have to bring that together in common product data sheets, which are then, or templates first of all, which have to be completed then to digital product data sheets. Which can be then collected in central databases. So that means that the government is setting the framework, and then the national authorities set the requirements in their building codes. And this is the side of the requirement. And so how can we now provide access to this relevant sustainable information? First of all, standards are our primary source where we extract properties, so we go to the standard. Then we create templates for our industry. And then the different manufacturers fill in the values and then provide those data sheets in a digital way. That brought us to us as an industry to the result that we say that the standards today are translated in different human readable languages, but one important language is missing. This is the machine readable part, that we have also a code for the computer, and we see now already certain standards which have these machine readable codes. So you have these different languages, and on the end you have a GUID, which is then defining the interoperability of the information in the digital world. So this is, once again, visualization. First of all, we have templates based on standards, maybe referred to different classifications. We can have ETIM or others. And then we fill it in, and then it becomes a data sheet. So, environmental product declaration. I have here a document. Here you can see this information is actually a matrix of many values, right? And this is today not handleable in a project if you want to change a product to type it in every time. So this is not realistic. You have to find ways to have also data templates for EPDs. We have those standards. It's perfectly described on international level how a life cycle is described. also which indicators exist. And we have then EN 15804, which is then the standard in Europe. We have those life cycle modules and stages. This is also a data structure behind. We have then on the other side the indicators, different. It's not only CO2, it's many other environmental indicators. And this is then forming the matrix in which this EPD is declared. So this is certainly something in the product room. We pick this topic up, so certainly something we can provide a solution. We transformed now all these life cycle stages and indicators into the BSDD. It's a separate domain, you can find it. And we will, I discussed it with Artur, we will make an overview of this data to make it more accessible and understandable what we have here. But this is certainly a very important step. So the next topic is then the components. We don't work only with products, but we work with components in early planning stage, where we have to optimize the building in respect to embodied energy and carbon emissions. So there are ways now to calculate and provide this information also in a database which has API connection. In Switzerland we have called this Lignum Data, but it's certainly scalable to the whole building industry. And here we have an overview of the most important indicators, summing up over the whole component. And you see it's not always depth, it's also another advantage. Some indicators are here green, and those are beneficial indicators. This can be then transformed into IFC. So far the IFC property set is not up to date. That would be certainly a next step. So if someone is in charge of that, we will certainly take contact, and then this data is accessible over our API and brings then added value in other applications. So in Europe, together with Finland, Austria and Sweden, we developed a group which is tackle this topic. We create digital templates for the construction products in wood. And also biodiversity is a topic. We have a template for wood species, and we have now a database over 4,000 wood species, which is then certainly also a topic in certification of wood. And now we discuss how we can how you can transform this chain of custody standard in the digital world. So that was it from my side. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Hansueli. Let me introduce our next speaker, Artur. Artur is the newest member of the BSI Management Office. He does this part-time. The rest of his time is dedicated to a PhD, that researches the link between BIM and circularity. And at BSI works mainly on the BSDD. So please share with us your discoveries.
Thank you, Céline. Hello, everyone. Yes, and as Céline already said, yes, I'm the BSDD product manager since this year, and I'm also doing my PhD at Norwegian University of Science and Technology on how we can use digital technologies to support circularity of our buildings. And I would like to start with this chart from the IPCC synthesis report that was published this month. And it's basically showing us that the implemented policies are taking some effect, but it's not enough. And we definitely have to do more. We heard about a lot of good practices, such as reducing the embodied emissions of our buildings, energy consumption. Those are all good practices, and we should speed up and do more of them. But we should also look at what else can we be doing, what are the other strategies we can implement. And here, this is the topic of my presentation. So if you look at this slide, this is the material flow of materials in Europe. And you don't have to look at the numbers, I will explain. So it starts with the input materials, and we have around 15 tons of materials per person per year in Europe. And out of this 15 tons, around 37 gets emitted into the atmosphere, around 12 gets recycled, around 10 finishes on the landfill, but the majority of the materials that we extract every year, it gets accumulated. And it gets accumulated in everything you see around us, so buildings, cars, phones, everything that stays with us for many years. And this is, for me, a great opportunity, because if we address this issue, if we address what are we doing with these materials that we accumulate, we solve the waste problem, we solve the need for new materials, and we also, basically, this is one of the sustainable practices that we think into the future. Okay, what else will be those materials used for? What can we do to pass them to the next generations? And there are many strategies for that. One of them, like I listed here 9 strategies, and to summarize them, I would say we should be building smart. So we should, for example, think of the buildings that we already have, think if we can improve them, if we could maybe adapt them, reuse maybe the whole building or its parts. And if we need to design something new, we should think about, okay, how can we make it easy to maintain, adapt, maybe easy to reuse in the future as well. So there are a lot of good practices and standards about that. I will cover a few of them. And I brought here a few examples. So this one is a Quay Quarter Tower in Sydney, where there was a building that was already existing for almost 50 years, and it was too bad to be longer used, but it was also too good to be demolished. So the designer team decided to keep the core structure. So 95% of the core structure remained, and they just added new slabs around it, new facade, and basically this allowed to save 12,000 tons of CO2 emissions, which is, to give you a comparison, a person shouldn't emit more than 2 tons of CO2 per year if we want to keep up with our objectives. So that's a lot. But this is one example. This is another one. This is a resource central in Oslo that was opened this month, which is basically a huge facility to store reclaimed materials, reclaimed parts of different buildings. And they are not only stored, they are also digitized. So there's an organization that develops material passports, digital models, and you can basically purchase those components. But I'm a designer by background, and we are not taught how to design with such elements. And this is a huge challenge because, even if we have those products, how do we reuse them? Because they have limitations, and this is something we wanted to address in this project. So I'm a part of this Sleteloka project in Oslo, where we try to build a new building, a small building, reusing elements that are more than 100 years old. They come mostly from Norway, some come from Japan, but the idea was to keep the design workflow as usual. So the architect designed the building, and then we did this material bank of scanned elements, and we developed some algorithm that match the elements to the new design, so that we also give feedback to the designer saying, okay, if you design it like this, you are able to reuse maybe 80% of the components, but if you change, if you make this component a bit shorter, you will be able to save even more of emissions. So this is one way. I'm also a part of 3 projects about measuring circularity of buildings. This is the one from Portugal, where we tried to make a way to measure circularity of buildings based on BIM models. In this example, we have a model that was prepared for this demonstration. So it has a lot of properties that you normally don't find in your BIM model, such as connection type, which takes a value from 1 to 5. But how do we define those properties and those values? And this is where OpenBIM plays a significant role. So I brought here one example from the ISO standard on disassembly, saying that all the load-bearing elements should have reversible connections. And I brought also one example of the connection. And if I ask you, probably you won't be able to tell me, if this is a reversible connection or not, because yeah, there are screws, so probably you can unscrew them, but it's also anchored in the concrete, so we don't really know. So we need to have experts that tell us if it is or not, and we need a way to document if it's reversible or not, if we want to automate future reuse of components or maybe easier maintenance as well. And here we can use some open standards. So for example, in IFC, yeah, there's a mistake. It's not ISO, it's IFC 4.3. We see that, okay, we know what elements are load-bearing because we have a property that says, is it load-bearing or not? So we can make IDS, so information delivery specification requirements, saying that all the load-bearing elements should be reversible. But in IFC, we don't have reversible parameter. We don't have such concept. So what we can do is we can use the data dictionary that was already mentioned, and we can propose new properties, new concepts, and we can basically extend our IFC and reach it with more information that is relevant to different use cases. And this is a very simple example, but you can think of many other ones, such as mentioned before, indicators of, for example, global warming potentials could be also required on our projects using IDS and BSDD. And I will have 2 sessions right after this one about BSDD if you want to learn more. And I hope this can be useful to many of your use cases, because BSDD is not a standard, it's a service that buildingSMART wants to provide so that we can support all of our efforts, all of our work. So I would like to welcome you to the next session in the Sala L about building a data dictionary. And then after lunch, we have another one, which is basically a masterclass with guests explaining how they use BSDD, how they benefit, or what are the challenges of using BSDD. And to finish, I would like to say that we should be definitely doing more. I think we should be doing more open beam, and we should be doing more circular strategies to help us reach our objectives. Thank you.
Thanks, and please give an applause to these 3 speakers. And thanks for showing us what is already possible and what will be possible with our services and standards. Now I'd like to welcome back to the stage Nick and Frank for the final conclusions of this session.
Thank you for those presentations. It confirms what I hinted at the beginning, that a lot of people have been doing a lot of good things in the rooms and in buildingSMART in various activities. The reason that Frank and I have come back is we would like to suggest that buildingSMART should be doing more. We should do it with some urgency, and whilst these separate projects will continue, it must continue because they're all important, we need to get a message out to industry, to our community, that as well as governments taking action and individual citizens taking action, that we are the middle there, that we are the people who can make a difference in the work that we do. And so the suggestion that I would like to make, and I'd like you to react to, is that we should form an action group, a strategic action group, that buildingSMART should try and issue a sustainability manifesto, a message to our community that buildingSMART standards are central to sustainability, that we should put together a clear vision about that role, and in due course we should try and put together an acclamation and endorsement scheme, a message that there are certain things that people in industry can do to be open, to be ready for all of the sustainability challenges that we face. It may be acclamation and endorsement of governments and institutions, it may be of organizations and corporations, and it may be of individuals. But I think there's a need to say that building smart and open standards are central to the message of sustainability, the cause of sustainability. And so I think we should speak to our community and beyond our community, to all the professionals and participants in our industry, to say that sustainability needs open data, it needs sharing and commitment. So that's one part of the proposal. There's another part, I hope, that we need to think in terms of information requirements. I'm not going to go through the detail of this, but a common theme of all the presentations that we've just seen is the importance of measurement, that we have building models, asset models, that need to be measured before they can be assessed for sustainability. And there's an idea in my head that there's a minimum standard for those building models if they can be assessed for, if they're going to be assessed for any sustainability measure, whether it's the European ones or the Finnish standard or worldwide. And so I think we could aim to issue that minimum standard soon, so that then all the sustainability initiatives can rely on building models of a certain quality. And of course there is another task, which is about product data, activity data, construction method data, and so on. But my instinct, if I put it that way, is that we need to create that minimum standard for building models. At the design stage, when some things are unknown, but we still want to assess sustainability, and when they are completed and in operation, when more is known. So the question that I'd like to put in front of you is there more that Building Smart can do? Which means, is there more that you can do? It's a question about, can we form a group drawing on, called for now the Strategic Group for Sustainability, drawing from the other rooms, delegates from other rooms and other chapters, and should we give ourselves a year to make an impact, to have a manifesto by the middle of this year, with some kind of endorsement scheme by the end of the year, a sustainability IDS, a minimum amount of information for models by the autumn, so that we come back in a year's time and say, have we made a difference? So actually give ourselves a question, what could we do in 1 year, and then set out to try and do it. And that's very different to the way the rooms operate, where they set their own timescales. I would like to turn it around and say, what could we do in a year that would make a difference? So that's my challenge question. Frank, do you want to add anything to that?
Yes, thank you very much, Nick. Well, I fully agree with you, and let me rephrase it using your words. When we met and we started to discuss this topic, we said we need to build a corridor, because a corridor is a place where you link the rooms. So this is your words. So this is something I want to add, is that there is no more work to do. We don't want to ask you to do more. We ask you how we can connect the work you are doing, because the key of all the presentation you heard, thank you very much, all three of you. You have given an example about how you look at the data flow from a different point of view. Thanks to the BSDD, we can add metadatas on top of what we have already in the IDS, or thanks to the IFC. So there is no more work to do. This is really something I want to emphasize. There is no more work. It's a matter of connection. So what we propose with this strategic group for sustainability is how we can give an information to new stakeholders, because we are used to work with inside our technical room. I was asked to work in buildingSMART in France because I don't know anything about techniques. I'm from finance. But as a financial guy, because of what I showed you about the corporate sustainability directive, green finance, and so on, I need to have an information which is reliable about how the building is green, how the building is, what is the weight on carbon or carbon assessment. Who will give me that? PwC, EY? Yes, we can do. It costs me a lot of money. And it's not reliable. Well, it's reliable because what is expensive is reliable. So the matter here, the discussion we have in the room, is you are the knowledge. You in the rooms know how to connect the data, how to have a data collection, how to identify the patterns from the different scales of information from the components. And I'm looking to Schneider people. You have data about your components, very detailed. We don't know to have all your data. We need to have a translation about how your system components is performing into a system and how your system is performing into a building. The same that you showed us with the wooden construction, what is the embedded carbon of a wooden construction, what is the data template I can use, and how I can then have a reliable data about the real weight of carbon, of my embodied carbon in the building. Stop greenwashing. This is what we expect from you. So your responsibility is not to say yes or no, it's to say how we connect the rooms and the work done by BSI the last 15, 20 years in order to translate it to new stakeholders. This is where we have a leverage point. Don't speak anymore only to your usual people. Think about that we need to speak now to people who doesn't understand anything about techniques, about buildings, but they are the investors. They are the people who will loan and borrow money in banks. So how do we explain them that the data from an open beam standard, and thank you, Pekka, for the presentation about your system in Finland, because in France, we wanted to do it, we did it, but in such a way that it's a mess. You will do it better, I'm sure, and we have to learn from you. Why we do it as a mess? Because every department in the administration started to do a silo. We have a silo of thinking about how to do a European, an environmental product declaration. Of course, it's not machine readable. Of course. It's a different data template, not according to the standards. Of course. We have a system for energy calculation. Of course, it's not according to the European norms. We have a system from life cycle assessment. Of course, it's derivated from the European norms, but it's different. So this is why I think we need you in order to not repeat the same mistakes we made in France. Because we are in advance, in a way, but we will be in late in the next 5 years if we don't change very fast the way we connect the data together. And this is where the industry, we who are here in the room, the work you have done is very important for connections. And Nick, I don't want them to do more. I want them to cooperate, collaborate, to exchange the data and to show off that we can move from a snapshot vision to a dynamic flow of information from products to construction in order to do this group for sustainability. And the group for sustainability is not to say one more time, we will do a manifesto, blah, 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 no the greenwashing. It's about to say, well, the industry is organized to give you a reliable data that you can use into your decision process. This is the goal that we should have. Thank you. And I used yours.
Yes. So now it's your turn.
There is one question. You
Only
want
one.
absolutely to answer.
We want lots of questions. We want lots of yeses. You can say no if you like, but we'd like you to say yes.
But we accept only yes.
Okay.
You can hear me? Good morning, everybody. Thank you for presentation. Really great to see that this topic now at buildingSMART really will be pushed forward. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar of IDM or technical, this is ACA technical report, BIM and BAM, as a building energy modeling. Together with Jeffrey, we published, and it was recently released as a technical report. There, we had a chance to address really important aspect of building energy modeling. So without simulation, you cannot simply prove, right? So you need to simulate, and for that, you need to have a basis. You need to have a building model, which we, of course, think that there should be IFC. And not only IFC, we had an outcome that not only IFC brings information, that you can also use dynamic workflow using BCF. That was proved in Montreal. We presented that. Here's a more important aspect. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I would take this opportunity and, of course, mention Jeffrey as well. That I think we should take that working group into account, where we brought many domain experts. I'm also a domain expert coming from sustainability. We had the chance to bring all this sustainability or green building certifications together. We had representatives of the USGBC, Passive House, because it's not just a certification, it's a standard. We brought other domain experts. They gave us a feedback, and 5 or 6 expert panels that we brought together to discuss all that things, important things like exchange models that we want. Of course, it's a great idea to bring it on to ideas, and finally consolidate that, plus optimize all the processes what we brought into that technical report. So to optimize it, to bring it to this world, merging together sustainable, like, so let's say, green buildings together with existing buildings to be renovated to meet all that requirements.
Excuse me to interrupt you. Do you have a question?
No, it's a response.
Okay.
It's a support. That's exactly we want to do.
Good.
It's not a question. You ask who would like to join. That's what my response.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So again, you give a point of view of in the data flow with building energy simulation and building energy models, but it's just one point of view in the flow of a river. You look at one point with a simulation, where at the end of the day, I also have to look at the end with asset managers if the energy consumption is comparable to the simulation, and I need that at the end. So it's another format, and it's another data flow. So it's exactly that, and I fully agree. So thank you very much for your support. Any other question?
Yes.
Great. We have only 3 minutes left, so keep this
We
very
can
short.
have a coffee later.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I love it and enjoy it. But please, how can we really accelerate? I'm just afraid on the speed.
Don't be too French. It's not about acceleration, and I will really thank Pekka. It's about being reliable. So the point for me, as my personal point of view, is not how fast we will do it, but how reliable we will be. Because the winner will be the reliable. What I'm afraid of in the system in France is that we were fast. We are the world champion. We did it before the Finnish, the Danish, the Nordic countries. But is it absolutely reliable? I have some questions about it that I will not tackle here. So for me, the point is not how fast today, is how we can tackle the sufficiency point of view of IPCC in order to answer the global system, contracts, law, regulation, technical approach, data flow. So this is my answer to your question. Sir.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm a PhD candidate from University of Waterloo, Canada. My question is building and if setting an agenda for the BSI standards, will that be limited to the building envelope in itself or building in a context? Because when we connect building with the governance and the society, so then building need to be placed in a context.
Well, this is the point, because of course the building is connected to the electricity grid, all the grids. It's connected also to the society. It's connected to the transportation, and it's connected to the local rules of urban development. So it has an impact, and it's a huge impact if we can give a reliable simulation of a building that can be implemented in a urban law. And I think, Pekka, it's one of the ideas also behind for the governance of urban development to have this possibility to integrate the IFC model into the model of a city and to look at what will be the impact and then to use it as a tool for regulation of urban development. I speak on your behalf because I saw something in Espoo which is similar, but maybe you could add on about the connection.
If you think about the building as a whole, its impact in the CO2 emissions is if we compare it to the decisions that are made in the city planning. In city planning, you kind of use the carbon 70%, and the building itself only you can make decisions of 30%. So that it is always, the big question is the city planning, not the BIM model of a single house.
So it's not that it's not a big question. We know it's a big question. But the question is, what could we get done in a year? And then let's do it. Not try and wait 5 years to get everything perfect, but to start the journey and to make some commitments. Sorry.
Yeah, I will not have any question. I will just answer to Nick. The answer to your question is yes, yes, yes. We need a place. Look at what we did in the electrical room now. We were first called Sustainability and Energy Management. Then after some exchange with Mirbeck, we say, well, there's some confusion here. So we decided to call electrical room, but we need a place where we can find some guidance. We need a place where we can debate and fight. I mean, should we build an efficient building in the way it's a thermos bottle or a passoire, as we say in French, or something that is more dynamically? We need this kind of thing, definitely.
We have no time for more questions.
Just
Okay.
one. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would like to ask you, thanks a lot for your, I mean, the subject is very nice, and it's very nice opportunity to have this speech. ESG is by Financial Times composed by 3 terms. One is the E, and then we have other 2, S and G, and these are not quantitative entities, or these are more qualitative entities, but still they've got a very profound impact on the finance. So my question is, how are you going to assess these other 2 letters?
Well, let's tackle the E first, properly, if I may, because the social and governance are always, it's still under discussion with a taxonomy group at European level, with other groups, with accountancy and extra financial report about the S and the G. We made some report with Global Compact and the United Nations Environmental Programme about it, but we don't have a clear definition about how we can go there. I'm working with the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors with a social definition, and we can work on that. So, but please first, let's, as you said, do fast something reliable on the E, because it's missing still. So, but I fully agree, S and G are very important, as you said, sir, but we need to look at the impact of a building in the district planning, because the bigger this impact is, the district by itself, not the building alone. So I agree with you, but I don't have the answer, and I think we should focus on the E first. Then we will be incapable. If we are reliable on the E, I'm sure that the financial people would come back to us, say, what can you do on the S and G?
Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks everybody. And maybe as a final...
We need the last question.
Yes,
Who
exactly.
agree?
Please raise your hand.
Who agree?
Okay.
Who disagree? Oh.
They didn't hear.
All right. I would add that we have maybe to think about the long-term vision, and the building itself is something that we are actually giving to the society and more. So it's
lifespan is a key word for contractualization for this data template. So I think if we have unanimously yes. Okay. Nick, well done, Nick. Thank you, Céline. Thank you to all the presenters. Thank you very much for what you have done. Thank you for your support. And now we are going to work on the corridor.
You will hear from us soon.
No more work in rooms, work in corridors.
Thank you.